So I've got idiopathic or primary pulmonary hypertension.
I've got pulmonary arterial hypertension.
PH, pulmonary hypertension.
CTEF.
Idiopathic pulmonary hypertension.
Now, I urge you, at this moment of national emergency, to stay at home, protect our NHS, and save lives.
People must have just thought, like we did, it would be a week, a month, or, at the most, because they'll sort this thing out.
When the pandemic started and I was in the early stages of diagnosis, it was very much a worry because I hadn't realised what was going on, other than to know that I had a large blood clot on my lungs.
It then made my family really worried because, they just thought, oh, it's bad enough if you get it, but if mum gets it, that might be the end.
I was worried. I instantly felt alone. It was really tough.
I just thought that having the PH diagnosis, as well as you having COVID and them struggling for ventilators and all the other things, that if you were in that position where you were really sick, that you might not be given the chance to live against somebody else.
As a mother with a child with pulmonary hypertension, the beginning of the pandemic was terrifying.
When we were told that I was clinically extremely vulnerable, it does make you feel very scared, because you think, oh my God, they've singled us out as one of one of the group that we're going to die if we get it.
I suppose to be told that I was clinically extremely vulnerable, I didn't really feel that way.
So shopping, first of all, was difficult because trying to get the slots was a nightmare. And then all of a sudden everything opened up, all of the big stores, and pretty much all of them were offering priority shopping spaces. Brilliant. The shopping would turn up and we had a conveyor belt going. So Liam, my husband, and Jack, my son, would be outside. They'd unpack it. The delivery driver would deliver it to the gate. They'd take it from the gate to outside the back door, give it a first wipe over. We'd bring it into the kitchen, my daughter and I, and we'd wipe it again. So it was all doubly wiped before we wouldn't do anything. Fruit was washed, even more so than it would be normally. And then everything that we touched was then wiped. The sides were wiped down, everything. It took hours.
The shielding of vulnerable people and the elderly, who are the most affected by this virus, that is in our plan.
As the months went on and they were letting people come out, but not the vulnerable, and they were saying to us, you need to stay in your house, don't go in your garden, just open a window to get some fresh air. Don't see anybody at all, just be, if you're in your own little bubble.
Most people that we know respected the fact that I should shield and isolate, so not too many people wanted to visit, but those that did, we were able to use the garden and have sufficient space.
Well, it wasn't as bad at first to an extent because everyone was in lockdown, so you were still, yes, you were, CEV, but to an extent you're in pretty much the same situation as most people. It was only when more restrictions lifted and everyone else could go out and you're like, oh, I'm still here.
So when everybody else was out clapping on a Thursday for the NHS, I would go stand at the window and clap. But nothing came in other than delivery drivers with our food or the mail or anything. No one went out. We just didn't move.
We put posters on the gate, both gates. Do not enter. Vulnerable person in this house.
The family were able to go out for walks, and I remember that very clearly. They'd all go out for a walk, and I felt like a prisoner.
Yeah, in March of this year, I had a pulmonary endarterectomy at Papworth Hospital, which is to remove all the old clots, the chronic clots from my lungs.
When I was given the date for admission to Papworth for the operation, I knew that I wasn't allowed to have any visitors, so I would be there on my own, and after dropping me at Papworth, Thelma would have to drive 100 miles back on her own and be here on her own, not knowing exactly what was happening.
One of the things that I found really challenging and still do related to healthcare is remote appointments, like telephone appointments. I think two aspects, one being the timing and the appointment itself, but the other being the follow-up and how we actually implement the things that are discussed in that appointment.
Those early days were emotionally very draining. Not knowing, not being able to control anything.
I've just won a massive battle with PH, from being down a black hole, as I called it, where I just thought I was going to go down there and not come out. That was the end of my life. And I came out of that and started to live. And then I just thought, it's took my life again, only this time it isn't PH. It's because I've got PH that I've got to stay in. But now this coronavirus is stealing my life. So that was even worse than PH, because at least with PH, my family were around me.
My sort of physical health really went down. Not so much my pH health, that was fine actually, but my physical health on the distance that I could walk really, really deteriorated, because I just couldn't. There's only so many times you can walk up and down a garden.
We're absolutely clear that you should not leave your home unless it's for one of 4 reasons.
I remember in lockdown and constantly seeing on the news people breaking lockdown, and I was so frustrated and really angry, and I can't see my family, and I'm here alone when you're breaking rules.
Well, the government and the media made me feel really angry, because when I did eventually go outside and I realised we could be in open space, you just hadn't to be with any other people.
The last couple of years for most people have had times of like real stress or difficulty, and a huge thing for me during that time that's been a benefit has been my faith. I have a very strong personal faith, and that plays out in basically every part of my life.
2 of the most important things that I worked on was trust and faith. I had to trust what I was being told, and I had to have faith in the advice I was being given.
It sounds funny, but probably having pH actually helped cope with the whole situation better, because we're used to being super clean, we're used to being super careful of crowds and of other people with germs and everything like that. So that kind of all came normally.
For us as a family, technology was really important to help get us through lockdown.
And it just helped me stay connected with all my friends. With the class, I could still learn, and a lot of other things.
I kept myself busy doing all sorts, so I really like making things. So I have made my own clothes, so like knitting. I'm a bit of a geek, really.
I think the key support aspects that I've experienced over this last 2.5 years especially has been the support of my wife. We were able to relax in our garden, and that actually creates some very quiet mindfulness moments.
But there's one group who've been more patient and given up more than almost any other, and that's the 2.2 million people who've been shielding.
So when things started to lift and you could start going out and you could start visiting people, I quickly came to the realisation that life's short and there's a lot I want to do, there's a lot I want to see. I'm going to live life as much as I can.
It changed because you knew you could go out, but you actually didn't really want to go out. I was very still scared.
Absolutely nothing changed. Yes, some of the guidance was relaxed, but I didn't feel comfortable following that relaxed guidance. So I just followed my own guidance and remained the same. And it's the same for the wife, Diane. She stopped her job. So.
When we were offered the vaccinations, we had them straight away.
When these jabs came out, I was like, oh my God, at last, there's something.
Well, actually, I had my 4th vaccine in February this year, 2022. And 3 weeks later, I actually caught COVID. After that, things did sort of change for me, because where I would go out and I just literally wouldn't hug, wouldn't touch, wouldn't go near people, once I knew I'd had it, I did feel this sort of safety net around me that I could do more things now. I had, not only did I have 4 injections, but I'd actually had COVID as well. So I did start to do things. It was the first time I went shopping in 2 years.
Having the vaccine allowed me to start living my life again, going back to me, looking after my PH, looking after my family, being involved with my family, and not the first thing I thought of every day was COVID and was it going to take our lives. Suddenly with the vaccine, that became second.
Ironically, all 4 of us came down with it last week. That was really scary, really, really scary. I don't know what Jane was going through. It was very scary. There's me laying there. Just listening. And says it prodding her.
I think on reflecting back over the last 2.5 years, if my relationship with Thelma hadn't been as strong as it is, we would have struggled immensely.
It does give you a different perspective in that everything can change really quickly.
Looking back, I mean, I've gone through a lot health-wise, and I'm still kind of going through a lot. So I things have always tried me. And that time was very trying, very testing. So it was at the time thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to get through it? But you just have to take each day as it comes.
If it happened all over again, I would not listen to the government. I would listen to my own common sense, because my common sense was telling me I know how to look after myself. Don't tell me what to do.
I think that I would maybe not have been so set in not doing anything. I think, there would have been smaller risks I would have taken, because I just think, why didn't I take those risks? But then hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it?
The last few years, for me personally, it's been a black hole.
You've just got to weigh up them risks now, haven't you? And obviously having a little boy, and I think that's all affected him massively. Not just the COVID, but my ill health and the way I have been. He's been really worried about that. So I think I've got to have some normality in my life, not just for me, but for my family.
I feel a bit more confident, but still not 100% because I've had my 5 jabs. So yeah, I do feel a bit more confident, but like I say, nothing's changed. Still shields. It's just become the new norm.
It's been a major roller coaster, major learning curve, and a really big rethink on the values of life.
But because of the efforts we've made as a country over the past 2 years, we can now deal with it in a very different way, moving from government restrictions to personal responsibility.